starting out with some of the games, looking out at the Big 12 as it currently stands, we got Oklahoma State was taking on Texas. Like it's the thing, like is Texas back? As soon as Texas starts winning a couple games, all of a sudden, man, they draw the eyes of the nation. And believe me, Casey Thompson, is playing fairly well for the most part. Bijan Robinson's been pretty good. They had OU, they had them, they let them off the hook and couldn't find a way to close the deal. So kudos to the Sooners. And if you're Texas, well, you've got a long hill to climb. So now all of a sudden they've got to take on Oklahoma State, who has been kind of the underrated team. When you think about Okie State and Mike Gundy, I always think of quarterbacks that are kind of NFL caliber fringe guys, great in the system, probably don't have the greatest skills, but they can get the ball out, and they always seem to have some pretty good receivers on the edge. And occasionally they have a really talented running back to kind of pair it with them. But Oklahoma State, I mean, my goodness, they did a great job of weathering the storm. Texas jumps out. Oklahoma State finds a way to kind of stay in that game and then dominates really kind of the second half and fourth quarter after battling back from being down a couple of scores early in the game. And really what it hinged on is that Okie State defense, which for the longest time in the Big 12, we always say no one plays defense. And it seems like the scores are coming down a little bit this year. And I don't know if that's a function of the fact defenses are better or maybe offensive football just isn't quite as good. But Oklahoma State down the stretch, forcing 3 or 4 and outs in the fourth quarter before ultimately Casey Thompson threw the interception that basically wrapped up the game. But in your last 5 possessions, you have an interception and then 4 3 and outs, or a 4 and out in there as well, turnover on downs. That's a heck of a job right there for an Okie State defense. And like I said, they're not the high flying offense that they've been. I don't think right now, after watching them play as much as I have, that, they can compete with maybe some of those teams in the top 5 or 6. But you never know. They keep getting it done with defense, and we'll see how they kind of continue to play. And as they match up, and you've got Bedlam on the horizon here to finish the season, we'll see kind of how Okie State is able to kind of evolve and how they play. Purdue traveling to Iowa, number 2 Hawkeyes. Big Ten's got 5 teams ranked in the top 10. And these are the games that all of a sudden, the Big Ten loses. And it's like, what are you doing, Iowa? Why did you lose this game? However, there were signs that I wrote about, in my big games and best bets. Like Purdue was really good on the ground with their rushing defense. Their defense was fairly decent in general, and they had an elite receiver in David Bell. And so here's the recipe to be able to beat Iowa. And it's teams that run the ball pretty well and play really good defense. If you can get out to a lead on them early, force them to play a chase game, and then you don't get pressure on the quarterback, because this was the other fatal flaw with Iowa. And they've had some injuries in their secondary, and so that's all part of it, and I get it. But their secondary is good, but I don't think that they're elite. And so if you can give their quarterback time, they'll be able to pick you apart. And what Jeff Brom did is he rotated 3 quarterbacks throughout the entirety of the game, kept Iowa's defensive line, a little bit at bay doing that. And they did get some pressure, but in doing so, they weren't really able to impact the quarterback that much. David Bell comes in, boom, does a great job, over 200 yards receiving. And he's done a really good job every time he's played Iowa. So this isn't just something that came out of left field. Does a phenomenal job with that. Iowa didn't really force any turnovers. Like they had feasted on turnovers to the point where I believe after the Maryland game, half of their scores had come off of turnovers. And so if you're not giving that offense short fields, because they can run the ball okay, and Spencer Petras is all right, but if you force them to drive 80-yard fields and you force them to have to throw the football, it was going to be tough. I thought Iowa would still win this game. I thought it'd be within the 11.5 points that it was earlier in the week as far as the line, but it seemed like a game that Iowa could get caught a little bit. I thought they'd pull it out. I thought being at Kinnick would help, but Iowa's got a bye week coming up. Sometimes you overlook, and they were coming off an emotional game and a big win and a huge comeback against Penn State. So they dropped down to 11. Purdue slides into the top 25. And so, Iowa's fallen from the ranks. And I think that that's about what it was going to be anyway, whether it was in the Big Ten championship or they got picked off some point in time. They were going to lose a game this year. It was just a function of when. And I think we kind of knew how it would ultimately look. So kind of just outline that there. Michigan State, Indiana. Michigan State, obviously top 10 team. Indiana struggling this year. We're supposed to be great at all these expectations. They've had some injuries. They've had some issues, haven't really lived up to what they were supposed to be. But this is a game that I feel like historically Michigan State would always lose. And it's amazing how the guys in the desert get it right. Spread was 4.5. I don't think they called for a 20 to 15 score and a Spartan win, but they cover the line and find a way to move on. And, Indiana played pretty good football. They slowed down Michigan State immensely. It wasn't a pretty win for the Spartans, but they were able to stop Indiana's running game enough. They forced it all on reserve quarterback Jack Tuttle, had a couple of interceptions, didn't play terrible outside of that, but they forced him to throw the ball an immense number of times. And when you're going to ask your quarterback to do that, I think it was 52. You're never going to be able to win when you're asking your backup quarterback to do that. So they can get Michael Penix Jr. back later in the year. We'll see if they can make a push. They have Ohio State coming up this weekend. And now Michigan State goes to a bye. And in 2 weeks, Halloween weekend, you've got Michigan State and Michigan. You've got Penn State and Ohio State. So 2 huge games in the Big Ten that we're going to be able to have there. Now, on to the SEC. We'll get to Coach O. We'll get to Lane here in a little bit. But the Kentucky-Georgia game, I thought Kentucky played pretty well in the first half. It's obvious Georgia's incredibly talented. And I've talked for weeks, a little bit like Iowa's formula. If you can slow down the Georgia rushing attack, and that's a big if because they're really good. And I think that Kentucky held them to around 160 yards. They did a pretty darn good job. But if you can slow them down, we'll see if Stetson Bennett can beat you through the air. And you've got to put some points up as well. And when you watch that game in the first half, Georgia steamrolls down, gets a couple of scores. Kentucky manufactures a few stops, and they put together on their scoring drive in the first half. I think I tweeted this out. It was one of the most impressive, 7 or 8 play sequences for Kentucky with misdirection, play action, screens, throwbacks, everything you saw for them to be able to score on Georgia. And they had to score at that point or the game was going to be out of control early on. They end up scoring there. They take it into halftime, I believe just down 7. But Kentucky's good. They're just not in the class of Georgia. And so I wouldn't be surprised if that's the last game that they potentially lose, until maybe a bowl matchup. They're a really good team, and Mark Stoops has them playing at an incredibly high level. They've got a good defense, and they're creative enough offensively to be able to manufacture enough points to win games. And that's what allowed them to beat teams like Florida and LSU. They just can't match up to a team that's playing really good. And the guy that we've kind of beat up on and, Mr. Smellgood, Stetson Bennett himself, threw for 250 yards. And I'm not going to sit there and just besmirch that. That was something that was really, really impressive. 3 touchdowns. When you limit, George, I use the term limit to 162 yards on the ground. I mean, that goes a long way. And Will Levis, he attempted 42 passes. That's probably not what Kentucky had in mind. You held the Wildcats to 51 yards rushing, so that Georgia defense ultimately held up in a big way. And I think that that's the anticipation for them all year. Kentucky was a little banged up front on the defensive side of the ball, but this Georgia team is for real. I don't know if there'll be a team that will be able to slow down the Georgia Bulldogs rushing attack to under 100 yards. If they can do that, okay, then we'll be able to see what maybe they can do throughout the air. And ultimately, when Kirby Smart has to make the decision on Stetson Bennett or JT Daniels, you've kind of built a lot of momentum. And with how well Stetson Bennett played, and we can talk about the point spread, but when it's a game where it's 1 versus 11, I mean, that's a big time matchup. And Stetson Bennett, was able to rise to the challenge and play really good football. And so I think he's probably has the driver's seat right now to hold on to that job, because as talented as JT Daniels is, and people look at him as potentially an NFL guy and Stetson Bennett's the walk on, sometimes coaches begin to roll with the guy who they see make those plays, who they've watched their team kind of rally around, and you feel like that's who Stetson Bennett is, and you've watched him kind of do that. So coaches have a hard time unseeing something that they really, really enjoy. So kudos, Georgia, best team in the country right now by far. I questioned them earlier. I don't know about their passing game. They need to get some guys healthy, most notably JT Daniels, and then figure that out. But they've answered every other question that you could possibly have, and they've done it against some pretty good teams.